Hello and welcome back to History in a Nutshell. Now, today's episode might be a bit more practical than other episodes. It's probably going to be a bit more technologically specific, if you will. Or it's certainly going to be perhaps a bit more academically orientated than previous episodes. So, one phrase you've probably come across, whether you're studying history in school, sixth form, university, or if you're just exploring it out of personal interest in your own time, is this word historiography. Now, if you've heard that word, your thought has probably been, well, what actually is historiography? And perhaps you have some ideas as to what it is. Perhaps you've been told and you define historiography as the history of history. Perhaps you define historiography as what historians say, or some variant of that. What historians think about X, Y, Z. Perhaps you've heard it said, well, historiography is the story of how history as a discipline has evolved and how the different methodologies have changed with time. And, of course, all of these definitions coexist and overlap considerably, simply because historiography is really all of those things, and in some ways more. So, if you're a casual reader pursuing history in your own time, and you're reading, say, a Wikipedia article on something, the sense historiography is often used in that context is just a sort of apt summary of the scholarship on it. So-and-so says this, so-and-so says that, so-and-so disagrees with so-and-so. I'm sure there's a section on Wikipedia, probably a lot of people skip it, on any given historical topic that has a section on that. So, that's one context you might have heard it. Now, if you're formally studying history, you've probably received some monologue by someone at some point about why historiography is important. And it is, because it's a story of how history as a discipline has developed and how our understanding of history has developed. So it is important. But that begs the question, doesn't it? Well, history in a nutshell. How do I use historiography to my advantage? How do I use and get marks for this thing called historiography? Now, naturally, if you're a student in sixth form or a student at university, the people you're studying under should be your first port of call as to how they approach historiography and what they expect you to see and what you'll gain marks for. But I can make some general observations that I think will help clarify this beast that is historiography a bit better. So, frankly, for most of people's under 18 education, historiography isn't that important. I don't recall ever really hearing it discussed when I was studying GCSE history or when I was any younger than that. So you shouldn't worry too much about it. Even at A level, I would say it isn't massively important. Really, with regards to A level, you should be focused on the breadth and depth of knowledge you expect to know in exams and whatever the criteria for your history coursework should be. And they should be your main focuses, your main priorities, your main focus. But that being said, it's not a bad idea to engage with historiography somewhat at A level and at sixth form level. So, for example, with most A-level syllabuses, within the A-level history coursework, there will be some emphasis on historiography. There will be some emphasis on this historian said this historian said that, why this is strong or this is convincing. And what they want to test you on here is whether you can think critically about what you're reading, about what you've been given to read, and can you sort of juggle different ideas in your head and come to good conclusions. So there'll probably be some marks available for historiography there, and, study the historians recommended as part of the history coursework, read the key text you're told to read, as background reading for your coursework, and incorporate them into it and briefly surmise what they say and briefly talk about why they came to the conclusions they came to and whether they're convincing or not. But frankly, even at A-level, I would say, there shouldn't really be a great deal of emphasis on historiography, because in comparison to when you get to undergraduate and master's level, it's really a different ballgame, A-level history. Now, when you're applying to read history at university, it's not a bad idea to engage a bit with historiography on your personal statement. Again, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't go overboard completely on it. Just mention in passing you enjoy reading this historian and you find their theory on this persuasive. Or something along those lines. Kill a few birds with one stone, you've only got so many words. Mention some historians you like reading. Mention your interests in history and what areas you're interested in. Maybe tie it as to why you want to study at a particular uni. Maybe. But again, of course, you apply to 5 unis really, and then select your 2 main choices. So use your initiative, but kill a few birds with one stone. Mention some historians you like, and get to mention their methodology a bit. So you cover methodology, you cover historiography, and you cover history you like reading. Maybe make it faculty or uni specific depending on the context, but use your initiative there. Now, when you're a student of history at university, the stakes are a bit higher and there's a bit more to cover. And there will invariably be a lot of marks available for historiography. So it's important that you get this right. So, ways you can engage with an historian: the era they wrote in, their political views if they're known. If you're writing about E.P. Thompson for something, for example, his political views were very widely known. Why that shaped what he studied and what he researched is, in some ways, I would argue, apparent. And so it's easy to incorporate that into a discussion of his work. You can compare and contrast historians. That's a good way of gaining marks. For a dissertation, a very good way to sneak a good bit of historiography in is to just aptly summarise the scholarship on a subject so far. Compare and contrast and examine how it evolved with time and what different historians wrote and said at different points. You'll get some marks that way. At MA level, following on from that, be sure to use plenty of historiography, but the same points largely apply. You can pick up marks by just sort of summarising the scholarship and summarising what other people have written and contextualising your writing and your ideas in it, and mention methodologies used, mention any political views or failing that, mention the context if that's relevant. For example, if you're writing about, say, Professor Richard Pipes, for example, he was a very anti-communist Polish American, very anti-Soviet. I mean, whilst he was a competent scholar, if you read any of his writings, it soon becomes apparent that anything Russian, anything Soviet, is incredibly bad in his books, and anything the Soviet Union is doing that is positive is a front for something else, effectively. I mean, it's a bit of an overstatement, but it's fair to say that if you're going to cite Richard Pipes, it's worth including in that he has some pretty obvious political views and some pretty obvious political objectives. So, just to recap, what percentage of time you should devote to historiography and how you should engage with it varies a bit at the level you're at. High school students, frankly, shouldn't worry that much. Even at A level, I wouldn't worry that much. And I'd ask the members of staff who are teaching you what they want you to do with it. But frankly, don't worry that much about it. There aren't that many marks available, quite frankly, for the most part, for A-level history students. If you're writing a personal statement to study history at a university, Of course, it's worth mentioning a bit about historiography. You'll stand out that way. Kill a few birds with one stone is my personal advice. Mention what you're reading, what your interests are. Mention the methodologies and how the scholarship has evolved, and you'll have a very strong personal statement there. When you get to uni, there's a big step up. Critically engage with historiography wherever you can. You can sort of surmise the scholarship on a subject to pick up a few quick marks. And we'll touch a bit more on theory in a later video, but theory and historiography intertwine somewhat, and it's important to get that right. Few easy ways to do it. Look at how historians agree and disagree. Look at how history has evolved and how the scholarship has evolved and mention that. Mention any reasons why a historian might be attracted to a certain field or may hold strong views on a certain field. Context, political views, methodology used, sources engaged with, etc., etc. So thank you for watching this episode, and let me know in the comments below, is this video helpful? Has this video helped your understanding in any way? How do you use historiography in your studies?